Let me first start with starting a command line again in administrative mode so we can run our Docker commands. First, let me start with my docker ps command, which lists out the running containers that are on my machine. You can see at the moment there are none running. If you do a docker ps -a, you can see Docker containers that have run but have exited their command. So you see these ones are exited and they have given a special name to every container instance. And you can also see that they were run on the Microsoft Windows Server Core image. Now when I do a Docker search, that's where we can get images from the Docker Hub. So if I do a Docker search on Microsoft, I will list out all the Docker images that are provided by Microsoft on Docker Hub that we can pull down and use on our local machine, like Microsoft ASP.NET, Microsoft IIS, for example. And by the way, do not forget the Windows Server Core one that we just been using in the previous demo. So here you see Windows Server Core. Now I can use the command line docker pull to pull down an image. So I'm going to docker pull Microsoft IIS, for example, and you see here that it then pulls the image down, but you can see that I already did it because it's of course a larger download that I need to get on my machine. The next thing that I can do is I can say, okay, I would like to run this Docker container, so I can say docker run -d, which means that I'm pushing it to the background and I get my command prompt back right away. And I'm passing it in the -p8080, which means that I'm doing a port mapping of port 80 on the container to port 80 on my local host. Then I'm passing in the image, Microsoft IIS, and this now starts then the container, which is now running, and I can address it by 0024, for example, as the name. Now the next thing I would like to do is in my running container, I would like to execute another command. So I can do docker exec -it, I get an interactive prompt again, and I'm now using this identifier 0024 to actually execute a command in an existing container. Now I'm passing it the command that I would like to execute, cmd, and when I hit enter, I'm now inside the running instance of the container. You can see that this is an IIS image because there's an inet pub directory. And you can see that we can go to the www root directory where you have the IIS start HTML page. When I exit now the container, I can then do a docker ps to list out, and you can see that this Docker instance is running. Now the next thing I would like to do is inspect this particular image because I want to know on which IP address I can address this particular image. Here you can see the details on the running container, and you can see, for example, the isolation, which is just process isolation and not Hyper-V. And you can see, for example, if you have set CPU quotas or memory quotas or all kinds of things. You can also see the networking, and here you can see that we're using networking, and we have an IP address of 172.18.66 and then 246. Now, if I go in my browser to that particular location, then you will see that I can now see Internet Information Services running on my local host as a container. Now I can stop the container by using docker stop and then again 002 identifying the container I would like to stop. And the moment I stop it and I will refresh this page, you will see that the container is not responding anymore, so I'm not seeing anything anymore. The container is now in the stopped state. When I again do a docker ps -a, you can see that the Microsoft IIS is still there. And you also see the older container images that I've been running in the previous demos. For example, the Microsoft Windows Server Core one where I created the demo folder. So now let I issue a docker commit on that particular instance. What I'm doing is I'm creating now a new container image that I can use and run again. So if I do a docker images, I can see the images that are there, and you see that there's now an image with no name because I didn't pass it any name, and I can address that now by the image ID. I can give that image a name by using the docker tag command, docker tag and then the hash of my image, and I'm going to name it my container image. Now if I list out again the images, you see that I now have my container image, which is the latest, and it's the exact same image ID I just passed in. Now I can issue a docker run again, -it for the interactive prompt, the name of my container image, and finally the command line that I would like to execute. Now you can see that when I'm getting into the container, I can do a dir, and you see my demo folder again. And when I go to my demo folder, there's the file, the text file that I just created in the first demo. So here I type it, you see the text that I typed in there. So you see that all the state is there in the image. Now the final thing that I want to do when I'm on my development machine is list out all the images that are still running, and you can see that it's quite a bit already. And I would like to clean up some of the images that I don't need anymore. I don't want to commit these, so now I can pass in 8b for the first container, F2 for the second identifier, and I can list them out with just a space in between. I need to uniquely identify all the containers that are there. Now it's cleaned up, and if I do a docker ps again -a, you will see that there are no images dangling on my machine anymore. So this now cleans up the development environment and gives me a clean slate to start doing other development.